So imagine you are sitting in a room and it is cold.
Like freezing cold.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can actually see your breath. And on the table right in front of you is a single ice cube.
Okay, I am picturing it.
Currently, the room is, let's say, 25 degrees. But ever so slowly, the room begins to heat up. So it hits 26 degrees.
Still freezing, though.
Right. 27, 28, the ice cube is just, sitting there. Nothing is happening. 29, 30.
Just waiting.
31. Still nothing. And then it hits 32 degrees and suddenly the ice begins to melt.
Well, yeah, I mean, it feels like this totally sudden transformation,
yeah.
Right? But, of course it really isn't.
Exactly. That 1 degree shift wasn't magic. It was the result of all that latent accumulated potential from all the previous degrees.
Right. The work was happening the whole time.
Yeah, you just couldn't see it until you crossed that critical threshold. Welcome to Deep Cuts and Deep Thinking.
It is such a great visual. Because that ice cube metaphor is essentially, it's the story of human behavior, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
We put in all this effort, whether it is going to the gym or trying to learn a language, and we don't see an immediate result.
Right, and we just get so frustrated.
Exactly. But the potential is just accumulating beneath the surface.
Which is exactly what we are unpacking in this deep dive. Because in today's world, optimization culture is just absolutely everywhere.
Oh, it really is. It's inescapable.
Right. Everyone is trying to hack their productivity or their fitness, their sleep. So we are taking a hard look at the actual biological and psychological science of behavior change.
And we are specifically looking through the lens of James Clear's book, Atomic Habits.
Yes. Our mission here is to uncover why you do what you do, how tiny tweaks can radically alter your life trajectory, and where this massive self-improvement trend gets things incredibly right.
And crucially, where it falls short. Because it definitely does.
It totally does. And the mechanics of how we actually change are fascinating.
Yeah, because it is not just about having enough grit or willpower.
Right.
It is about understanding the actual neurological systems at play.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand how to actually melt that ice cube in your own life, we first have to fundamentally change how we view progress.
Right, which is hard.
So hard. We have all been conditioned to obsess over goals.
Yeah.
Like you set a goal to lose 20 pounds or write a book or run a marathon.
Yeah, we are very outcome driven as a society.
But James Clear's book suggests a completely different approach. It asserts that you do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems.
I love that quote because goals are just about the outcome you want to achieve, right? But systems are about the actual processes that lead to those outcomes.
So it's like the day-to-day stuff.
Exactly. Think of it from the perspective of a sports team. Every single coach in the league has the exact same goal, right? To win the championship.
Right. Nobody's goal is to lose.
Exactly. But if the goal was the thing that caused success, every single team would win. The goal is actually totally irrelevant to the outcome.
Wait, really? Irrelevant?
Pretty much. What separates the winner from the loser is their system. It is what they do at practice every single day at 9 a.m., how they recruit, how they recover.
That makes a lot of sense. Like if you look at traditional dieting, that is purely goal-oriented.
Oh, entirely.
You just restrict yourself to hit a number on a scale. But building a system means focusing on eating healthy meals every day, regardless of what the scale actually says.
Right. It is about building a lifestyle, not just hitting a metric.
And the author illustrates this with the math of compound interest, which is wild.
Yeah, the 1% rule.
Right. If you can get just 1% better every day, the math, which is 1.01 to the power of 365, means you end up roughly 37 times better by the end of a single year.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, I do actually have to push back on that pure math just a bit.
Oh, really? Why is that?
Well, the arithmetic checks out on paper, obviously. But human biology and psychology simply do not scale exponentially like a bank account does.
Right, we aren't calculators.
Exactly. In reality, skill acquisition and biological adaptation follow what researchers call an S-shaped logistic curve.
Okay, an S-shaped curve. I am trying to visualize that. Does that mean the growth kind of like flattens out at the top?
Yes. Exactly. But it also stays flat at the bottom for a long time.
Oh, interesting.
Think about someone trying to learn the lead guitar.
Okay, yeah, lead guitar.
For the first 3 weeks, it feels absolutely impossible.
Yeah.
Your fingers hurt, you can't transition between chords, and you feel like you are making zero progress.
Just totally stuck.
Right. That is the flat bottom of the S-curve. You are putting in the effort, but the outcome just isn't there yet.
Oh, wow.
Then suddenly something in your brain just clicks. You can finally play a full song, and you experience this massive rapid spike in ability.
Okay, so that's the middle part of the S.
Right. But eventually you hit cognitive or physical limits and you plateau again at the top of the S-curve.
Which brings us right back to the ice cube sitting at 31 degrees.
Precisely. The 1% rule is a brilliant motivational metaphor. It reminds you that small things matter.
Yeah.
But if you expect a literal compounding exponential curve in your guitar playing or your weightlifting, you are setting yourself up for deep, deep disappointment.
Because it just doesn't work like that.
Right. The reality of neurobiology requires patience during those flat periods where the system is working, but the visible outcome just hasn't materialized yet.
Okay, so if systems are the mechanisms of change, what actually fuels the motivation to stick with that system during those long, flat plateaus?
That is the big question.
Because according to our research, the answer lies in how you view yourself. your identity.
Yeah, and this shifts the conversation from basic process management to dump psychology.
Right.
The framework suggests moving away from outcome-based habits, which is what you want to get, and moving toward identity-based habits, which is who you want to become.
Okay, so instead of saying, I want to run a marathon, you tell yourself, I am a runner. The book argues that every action you take is basically a vote for the type of person you wish to become.
I love the voting analogy.
Yeah, it's great. Like, you go for a run, you cast a vote for being a runner, you eat a vegetable, you cast a vote for being a healthy person.
Right, and it relies on self-perception theory.
Self-perception theory, what is that exactly?
It is fascinating stuff. It essentially states that we don't actually always know our own beliefs or attitudes.
Wait, really? We don't know our own beliefs?
Not always. When our feelings are ambiguous, we actually look to our own behavior for clues, much like an outside observer would.
Oh, wow. That is wild.
Yeah, so if you consistently sit down to meditate, your brain basically watches you doing this and eventually updates its own self-narrative. It says, I guess I am the type of person who meditates.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. But what happens when you inevitably miss a day? Because life happens, you know? You get sick, your alarm doesn't go off, your kids need you. If every single action is a vote, does missing a workout cast a heavily weighted vote for being a failure?
That is a very real concern.
It seems like tying your habits to your identity could actually make the guilt so much worse when you inevitably stumble.
You hit the nail on the head. That is the hidden danger of rigid identity framing.
Yeah.
If you are not careful, failing to uphold the habit creates this failed self-narrative.
A failed self-narrative. Yikes.
Yeah, you start to think, well, a real runner wouldn't miss this run, so I must not really be a runner.
Right.
And this just magnifies the emotional cost of slipping up and often causes people to quit entirely.
Which is the exact opposite of what we want.
Right. And this is where James Clear's book introduces a really crucial safety net, which is the never miss twice rule.
Never miss twice. It sounds like a way to just build forgiveness right into the system.
It is entirely about self-compassion. The idea is that missing once is just an accident. It is just a blip on the radar,
Right.
But missing twice. That is the start of a new habit.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, so by focusing on simply not missing the second time, you build resilience into your system. The goal isn't a unanimous election where every single vote goes to the good habit.
You just need a majority of the votes to win the election.
Exactly.
That reframes the whole concept really nicely. So, okay, once you have adopted the identity and you have your system in place, how do you actually wire these behaviors into your brain?
Now we are getting into the hard neurology.
Yes. This is where the deep dive gets super interesting. The book breaks behavior change down into 4 laws, right? Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying.
Right, and these laws perfectly map to the 4 stages of a biological habit loop.
Which are?
Cue, craving, response, and reward.
Okay, cue, craving, response, reward.
Every single habit you have, whether it is good or bad, passes through these 4 stages in the exact same order. If you break any one of them, the behavior simply will not become a habit.
Okay, let's walk through a really common example from the book. The cue is your phone buzzing.
Right.
That makes the trigger obvious. Then the craving is wanting to know who messaged you, so the urge makes the action attractive.
Exactly.
The response is picking up the phone, which is obviously incredibly easy. And the reward is reading the text message, which is satisfying.
Spot on.
So if the phone was hidden, you wouldn't get the cue. If picking it up required, I don't know, unlocking a heavy safe, the response wouldn't be easy. The loop requires all 4 parts.
It really does.
But I do have a question about that craving stage.
Okay, what is it?
Why is the urge to do something like that desperate, itching need to check a buzzing phone often so much stronger than the actual satisfaction of reading what usually turns out to be a super boring text message?
Oh, that is such a great question. To answer that, we have to look at the brain's anticipation system.
Okay.
For a very long time, scientists basically misunderstood dopamine.
Really? I thought dopamine was just the pleasure chemical.
Right, that is what everyone thought. They thought it was the thing that makes you feel good when you eat chocolate or win a game. But researchers studying incentive sensitization discovered there are actually 2 distinct neural architectures at play here.
2 different ones.
Yes, wanting and liking.
Wait, I would have totally assumed wanting and liking were the exact same feeling.
Most people do.
Yeah.
But they are completely different from a neurological perspective.
How so?
Wanting, which is the motivation, the craving, the intense drive to seek something out, is powered by these massive, sprawling dopamine networks in the brain.
Okay.
But liking, the actual physical pleasure you feel during consumption, is restricted to these tiny, fragile hotspots that actually don't rely on dopamine at all.
Oh, wow. So your brain is literally wired to want things way more than it is wired to enjoy them once you actually get them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And from an evolutionary standpoint, it makes perfect sense. Dopamine spikes during the anticipation of the reward, not the consumption of it.
Because it needs to get you off the couch.
Exactly. The brain needs to motivate you to go out and forage, to hunt, to seek resources. The thrill of the hunt is what keeps you alive.
Right.
So when that phone buzzes, dopamine just floods your system, creating an intense craving and an energetic drive to act.
Wow.
That is the biological secret behind the second law, make it attractive. You have to attach your habit to that dopamine-driven anticipation.
Okay, so as you repeat this loop over and over, how does the behavior actually shift from something you consciously choose to do into something automatic?
Think of it like paving a dirt road into a highway.
Okay.
When you first try a new behavior, it is like driving a heavy truck through an overgrown field. It is bumpy, it is slow, and it requires the full, undivided attention of your conscious, decision-making brain, specifically the prefrontal cortex.
Right, it takes a lot of mental energy.
Exactly. But as you repeat that cue and response loop, your brain starts clearing the brush and laying down asphalt.
It gets smoother.
Yes. And control actually shifts away from your conscious mind to a deeper, much more ancient system in the brain, the dorsolateral striatum that handles automatic routines. The behavior is essentially put on autopilot.
So if our brains are just hardwired to chase these dopamine spikes whenever we see a trigger, then fighting a bad habit with pure willpower seems like a totally losing battle.
It absolutely is.
We have to remove the triggers altogether, which means the secret isn't just in our heads, it is in our physical surroundings.
Yes. Willpower is just a short-term strategy. The science is very, very clear that your physical environment shapes your behavior far more than your internal discipline ever could.
The sources highlight a historical example of this that is absolutely wild.
Oh, the Vietnam study.
Yes. In 1971, two U.S. congressmen, Robert Steele and Morgan Murphy, made a stunning discovery. Over 15% of U.S. soldiers stationed in Vietnam were heroin addicts.
Which is just a staggering number.
It really is. And the public completely panicked, right? They were expecting this massive crime wave when these addicted soldiers returned home to the States.
Yet that crime wave never happened.
Right. When the soldiers returned home, the vast majority of them dropped the heroin habit almost effortlessly.
Yep.
How is that even possible with a substance that is so chemically addictive?
Because they completely changed their environment.
Okay.
In Vietnam, they were surrounded by the cues that triggered the habit, right? The intense stress of war, the specific friends they used with, and the easy availability of the drug.
It was everywhere.
Exactly. And every time they experienced those cues, their dopamine system fired up a massive craving. But when they returned to the United States, every single one of those environmental cues just vanished.
Wow.
Without the triggers, the craving simply wasn't activated in the same way. It proves that what we frequently perceive as a lack of willpower is often just the result of living in a high-temptation environment.
You know, think about your own life for a second. Have you ever noticed how easy it is to eat healthy at home when you literally just don't buy junk food?
Oh, totally.
But the second you step into the office break room and someone has left a box of donuts on the table, all your discipline just vanishes.
Yep. The donut always wins.
Right. That is your environment overriding your willpower. And it brings up the concept of choice architecture.
Yes. Choice architecture is key here.
I actually like to think of it as bowling with bumpers.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, like if you want to knock down some pins, you don't just stand there trying really, really hard not to throw a gutter ball. You just put the physical bumpers up.
Right, you make it impossible to fail.
Exactly. By making good habits obvious, like leaving your running shoes out right next to your bed, and making bad habits invisible, like unplugging the television and putting the remote in a drawer.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Right.
Right.
You are essentially putting up bumpers in the bowling alley of your life.
Yeah.
You gently guide your own behavior right toward the pins.
And that aligns perfectly with the law of least effort. Human beings are evolutionarily wired to conserve energy. We will naturally gravitate toward the option that requires the least amount of work.
So we're just naturally lazy.
Basically, yes. By reducing the friction associated with good behaviors, you actually leverage our natural tendency toward laziness.
So laziness can actually be a superpower if you design your space correctly.
It really can be. It is the very foundation of the third law, make it easy. And this is where the author introduces the 2-minute rule.
Oh, right.
If you want to start a new habit, you just shrink it down until it takes just 2 minutes to execute.
So like really small.
Very small. Don't set a system to read a book a week. Set a system to read just one page every night.
I have to admit, reading just one page feels almost silly. Like it isn't enough to actually make a difference.
I know, but that is exactly the point. You standardize before you optimize.
Standardize before you optimize.
Yeah, right. A habit must be established before it can be improved.
Yeah.
You were just trying to pave that dirt road into a highway. You were getting the autopilot process started. Once the highway is built, then you can worry about driving fast.
That makes total sense. So we have established these incredibly powerful tools. We have systems instead of goals, identity-based voting, the neuroscience of the dopamine loop, and choice architecture.
It's a robust toolkit.
It really is. But is there a danger in taking all of this optimization too far?
What do you mean?
Well, I am thinking specifically about the fourth law, make it satisfying, and this modern culture of habit tracking.
Ah, yes. You were referring to things like keeping a daily unbroken chain of X's on a calendar or, maintaining a streak on a language app.
Yes, exactly. And I actually have a personal failure story here.
Oh, do share.
So I tried learning Spanish on one of those apps, and I built up this massive 40-day streak.
Nice.
I was so proud of it. But then I went camping, I lost cell service, and my streak reset to 0. Yeah. I was so demoralized that I actually deleted the app, and I haven't spoken a single word of Spanish since.
That is heartbreaking, but also very common.
Right. It makes me wonder, if we turn every single part of our lives into a tracked metric, don't we risk becoming robotic? Like, where is the room for spontaneity or simply enjoying the activity for what it is?
It's a huge issue. Your experience with a language app perfectly illustrates a major psychological pitfall of habit tracking. It is known as the Zeigarnik effect.
The Zeigarnik effect. Okay. I have heard of this in relation to media. Isn't that the reason why a cliffhanger at the end of a television show drives us absolutely crazy?
Precisely. It is a psychological phenomenon where the human brain fixates intensely on unfinished tasks.
Because we hate loose ends.
Exactly. An unfinished task creates this state of unresolved cognitive tension that just occupies your working memory. Your brain desperately wants to close the loop.
Right.
Gamified streaks exploit this exact neural mechanism. They create highly visible open loops that basically drive your brain to seek closure.
So toward the end of my 40 days, I wasn't even doing the habit because I actually enjoy learning Spanish or because it aligned with my identity as a learner.
No, you were doing it just to satisfy the tension of the streak.
Yes. I completely became a slave to the metric.
Sociologists actually call this dataism.
Dataism?
Yeah, it is the modern belief that if you didn't track the data, the event practically didn't happen. The metric overrides the meaning of the behavior.
Wow, that is so true.
And as you experience, when people fixate entirely on the streak, a single break in the chain feels so catastrophic that they abandon the habit entirely. The tool meant to help you actually becomes a weapon against your own motivation.
That is wild. And that brings up a broader philosophical critique of James Clear's book. And honestly, the entire self-optimization zeitgeist we are living in right now.
Yes, let's get into that.
It just feels incredibly hyper-individualistic. Like it places all the burden and all the blame squarely on the individual.
That is a highly valid critique. And it is actually shared by many sociologists. The framework in Atomic Habits assumes you have the time, the resources, and the autonomy to perfectly design your environment.
Which a lot of people just don't have.
Exactly. It largely ignores structural, socioeconomic, and cultural barriers.
Right.
If you are working 2 jobs just to make ends meet, or if you are navigating clinical mental health challenges, simply tweaking your system or, making your visual cues more obvious does not magically erase systemic inequalities or trauma.
Right. Like putting your running shoes by the bed doesn't cure clinical depression.
No, it doesn't.
And unplugging your television definitely doesn't fix a toxic workplace or pay your rent.
Exactly. Atomic Habits is a highly organized, evidence-informed manual for personal behavior change, but it is not a panacea for all human suffering.
Right.
It works beautifully for building positive everyday behaviors. But for dismantling entrenched, structurally constrained issues, we really have to look beyond individual choice architecture and recognize the limits of self-help.
That is such an important context to keep in mind. These strategies are incredibly useful, but they don't replace systemic support.
Not at all.
However, it is fascinating to see how these exact same principles are being scaled up and applied far beyond just individual morning routines. The data shows these concepts are actually breaking out into institutional settings.
Oh, yes. The adaptability of the framework to groups is genuinely impressive.
How so?
Well, in education, for example, progressive teachers are using these concepts to shift students away from obsessing over their final grades, which are, of course, the goals.
Right.
Instead, they focus the classroom on building daily study systems.
And they use the concept of habit stacking for that, don't they? Like tying a new behavior to an old one.
Yes, exactly. A teacher might implement a rule that says, after I finish my math homework, I will immediately write 2 sentences summarizing what I learned.
Oh, that's smart.
Right. It ties the new, fragile habit of summarizing to an already established, stable routine of finishing the homework worksheet.
And it is being utilized in corporate leadership, too. Companies are establishing what they call keystone habits for their team.
Yes, team habits are becoming very popular.
Like they are building these small systems like daily 10-minute stand-up meetings or utilizing shared digital workspaces or implementing specific feedback loops after a project finishes.
Right.
They're trying to build organizational identity. They're essentially saying, we are the kind of team that communicates transparently.
And this highlights a core truth about human behavior, which is that we are herd animals.
We really are.
Our earliest and most deeply ingrained habits are imitated from our family and our surrounding culture.
That's very true.
So if a business or a school can create a culture where the desired behavior is simply the normal behavior, the friction drops to near zero. You literally don't need willpower if everyone else around you is already doing the thing you want to do.
If our brains just respond to the cues and rewards in our environment, whether we realize it or not, it makes me wonder about the broader implications of all this science.
Where are you going with this?
Well, if our individual habits shape our personal identity and our collective identities shape our society, what happens if we start applying these laws on a macro scale?
What kind of macro scale are you envisioning?
Well, what if we started habit stacking, not just for our own personal productivity or, to read more books, but for community empathy?
Oh, wow. I like that.
What if the next great societal shift isn't about massive sweeping policy changes, but it's simply a matter of designing better environmental cues for each other?
Right. Choice architecture for the community.
Exactly. Making it obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying to look out for our neighbors or to engage in our local civic processes.
That is a really profound perspective. Because if we can use choice architecture to trick ourselves into going to the gym, we can certainly use it to foster connection, civic engagement, and mutual support within our neighborhoods.
Why not, right?
The brain's circuitry really doesn't differentiate between a productivity habit and a pro-social habit. It just responds to the cues and rewards we design for it.
It really all comes down to the systems we build, both for ourselves and for the world around us. We are either designing our environment or our environment is designing us.
Very well said.
And I think that is plenty to chew on for today. Join the conversation, leave a review, and let us know what you thought of today's show.